Never before in the modern era have we seen so many major threats to global food production emerge simultaneously. Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Well, I've got a very interesting article, and for those that do not think that our world will be going into a food crisis, then I hope that they listen to this article and go do some more research on their own. Because a lot of the things that this article says about the state of our food production, not just as a country in the United States, but as a world, it's in dire straits, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm just going to go ahead and get on with it. Global crop failures continue. In Australia, this is going to be the worst harvest ever recorded. Global food production is being hit from seemingly every side, thanks to the absolutely crazy weather patterns, giant locust armies in Africa and the Middle East, and the unprecedented outbreak of African swine fever. A lot less food is being produced around the world than originally anticipated. Even during the best of years, we really struggled to feed everyone on the planet. And so a lot of people are wondering what is going to happen as global food supplies become tighter and tighter. The mainstream media in the United States is so obsessed with politics right now that they haven't been paying much attention to this emerging crisis. But the truth is that this growing nightmare is only going to intensify in the months ahead. And I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, I agree. If you've been with me for a while, a few months back, I don't know, maybe sometime last year, in the middle of the year, I remember doing a video where I said that I believe that we are going to go into a food shortage crisis as a world, and that crisis would not start to manifest itself for 6 months to a year. Now, I think that the time is coming short where it will start to manifest itself, especially this spring when they start trying to plant crops and they find that they're not going to be able to plant enough food due to the state of the soil being too wet from all of the floods that we're going to have, from all of the snow that we've had this year. And that's my opinion, but that's what I think. In Australia, conditions have been extremely hot and extremely dry, and that helped to fuel the horrific wildfires that we recently witnessed. And everyone knew that agricultural production in Australia was going to be disappointing this year, but it turns out that it is actually going to be the worst ever recorded. And it says here, the country's agriculture department said it expects production of crops like sorghum, cotton, and rice to fall 66%, the lowest level since records began in 1980 and 81. The continent of Australia is considered to be one of the breadbaskets of the world. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, in 2018 and 19, Australia exported over 9 million tons of wheat to the rest of the world. But thanks to the relentless crop failures, Australia has started to import wheat, and that is likely to continue for the foreseeable future. So instead of helping to feed the rest of the world, Australia is now relying on the rest of us to help feed them. And what is happening this year didn't just barely break the old records. In fact, one senior economist says this will be the worst summer crop production the country has ever seen by a large margin. Of course, if the rest of the world was doing great, we could certainly survive a downturn in Australia. Unfortunately, that is definitely not the case. Right now, billions upon billions of locusts are ferociously devouring farms in Eastern Africa and the Middle East. As I detailed the other day, giant armies of locusts the size of large cities are traveling up to 100 miles per day as they search for food. When they descend on a farm, all the crops can be consumed literally within 30 seconds. Can you just imagine that, ladies and gentlemen? That is amazing. It is a nightmare of epic proportions, and UN officials are telling us that this crisis is only going to get worse over the next couple of months. As I've stated in previous videos, ladies and gentlemen, they're saying that these locust swarms can multiply by as many as 500 times their size. So imagine if in 30 seconds one of these swarms can take down a farm. Imagine what would happen if they're multiplied by 500. In Uganda, the army has been called out to help fight this locust plague, but it is making very little difference. The most effective way of fighting these locust swarms is to spray insecticide on them from the air, but even that only produces very limited results. However, at least it is better than doing nothing. The UN is trying to raise a lot of money to get more planes into the air, because if nothing is done, the number of locusts could grow up to 500 times by June. Overall, the locusts are affecting nations with a combined population of nearly 2 billion, and the amount of food that these locusts are destroying is unprecedented. Meanwhile, in Asia, the outbreak of the African swine fever is the largest in history. African swine fever does not affect humans, but it sweeps through herds of pigs like wildfire. And once African swine fever starts infecting pigs in a certain area, the only thing that can be done is to kill the rest of the pigs to keep it from spreading everywhere else. Unfortunately, there has not been able to get this outbreak under control, and the losses have been staggering. According to the New York Times, the number of pigs that have been culled are equivalent to nearly 1/4 of the world's pigs. So, ladies and gentlemen, the amount of pigs that have been culled in Asia is equal to 1/4 of the world's pigs. That's incredible. But of course, this is not only dealing with African swine fever. In fact, cases of African swine fever have now been identified in 50 countries, and U.S. pig farmers are deathly afraid of what would happen if this disease starts spreading here. As a result of this crisis, pork prices in Asia have gone through the roof, and many families are no longer able to eat pork at all. Never before in the modern era have we seen so many major threats to global food production emerge simultaneously. There are more than 7 billion people living on our planet today, and we need to be able to grow enough food to feed everyone. If we aren't able to do that, food prices will start to get really high, and people in the poorest areas simply will not have enough food to feed their families. This is hopefully a wake-up call to any of those out there listening to this that may think that we are not going into a food crisis. And it's like I said, ladies and gentlemen, we may not see shortages here in the US because we do grow a lot of our food. We have a lot of our food imported, right? But they're not staples, right? We grow a lot of wheat. We have corn. We have potatoes, right? Even though we've taken a hit to our harvest, we probably still have just enough to feed ourselves. But what's going to happen when the demand for these same staple products go up around the world? There may not be food shortages here in the US, meaning that there isn't enough food to go around, but the price of the food, in my opinion, is what is going to create a shortage. So you may see a loaf of bread, just using a loaf of bread to use something, right? As an example, you may see a rack or a shelf in a store with bread in it. But at what price will that bread be? Because of the high demand for the wheat that it takes to make that bread. At what price will they have to sell it? So I think that I am going to go out tomorrow and do a huge payday prep. That's what I'm going to do. So be on the lookout for that video, ladies and gentlemen, because in all honesty, I was going to go out and probably buy another, pea shooter, because there's one that I've been wanting for a long time that I just haven't gotten. But I think I have enough pea shooters, and I think I'm going to concentrate on stocking up and stocking up and stocking up on more calories of all different sorts. So let me know in the comments what you think, ladies and gentlemen, because I think that we are going into unprecedented times. Not trying to fearmonger, not trying to get, anything out there to scare people, but all you have to do is open your eyes and see what's going on in the world. There are too many factors that are involved of all of the things that are going on in the world. And all of those factors, when you put them all together, I think it's going to create the perfect storm. Having said that, ladies and gentlemen, I know this is a short video. Thank you very much for joining in, and do your own research. I always say that because I think it's important that you don't just go by what you hear someone else say. It's important that you go out there and actually research this yourself so that you can validate what you have seen or heard or read, right? So thanks again for joining in. Remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Prep on, ladies and gentlemen. Time, I think, is starting to run a little short for us to be able to get those things that we may need for the long term at a reasonable price that we can afford now. It never hurts to have extra calories in your house because you can always consume those calories. Many blessings to all of you and your families. This is Alaska Prepper, and I am out.